This is a production of WGBH2 Boston.
Tonight on Greater Boston, renewed protests after yet another video shows a white cop killing a young black man in Chicago. Our caucus assesses what's changed since Ferguson. Plus, a former member of the group Anonymous is here to tell us how the hacktivists aim to take down ISIS. Then our latest Greater Bostonian, helping kids find success with song. And baking season is officially upon us, so I've called in the experts for a little help just hours before Thanksgiving. The Brass Sisters join me with their new, strangely named book, Baking with the Brass Sisters, with some of their best baking secrets. And finally, why I'm thankful for who I am not. Chicago is on edge tonight with concerns about unrest after the release of a videotape showing a white police officer shooting and killing a black teen. Here's part of the video, and be warned, it is graphic. It shows Officer Jason Van Dyke shooting 17-year-old Laquan McDonald 16 times last October as the teen walked away from other officers in the road while holding a knife. Chicago officials just released the video last night under court order, hours after Van Dyke was charged with first-degree murder. After the release, hundreds of protesters took to Chicago streets, and more demonstrations are planned ahead. Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, shots were fired near Black Lives Matter protesters for a second night in a row. No one was injured, but on Monday night, 5 people were wounded in a shooting. Police later arrested one person, 2 others turned themselves in. This all comes exactly a year after a grand jury failed to indict the white police officer who shot and killed an unarmed Michael Brown. Joining us to talk about what, if anything, has changed since then are Derica Purnell. She's a Harvard Law student, also helped organize protests in Ferguson. Good to meet you, Derica. Michael Curry, president of the Boston branch of the NAACP. Good to see you, Michael. Dan Linsky, former chief of the Boston Police Department, now heading up his own security firm, the Linsky Group. Good to see you too, Dan. Derica, let me start with you.
Sure.
You know, I thought it'd be hard to find anything harder to look at than Walter Scott being shot in the back in South Carolina, which we did months ago. But this may be it. You're a St. Louis kid. You're from St.
Louis woman.
St. Louis woman, excuse me. Anything change since Ferguson, or is it just the only thing changed more outrage amongst black Americans?
No, it doesn't seem anything would change. Like, we have
Why?
a history of this country built on police brutality around the black body. There's never been a time in this country where the black body has not been brutalized by police officers. So today we have video cameras and we have social media, so there's more public awareness. But these incidents are not new. They're just new in conversation.
Well, but if it turns out there is a movement or there is an organization that's hoping to lead a movement, virtually everybody's talking about it, even if they don't have the position that you think they should have on this issue. Mm-hmm. So does that mean that we won't see movement next year or the year after or the decade after because there's a history of this? Is that where you're going with this?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, to answer your question, nothing has changed since Ferguson because this is centuries of police brutality. So that's the answer to your question. That doesn't mean that next year there won't be a movement. Hopefully there will be progress. But we can't have an honest conversation about progress if we don't have an honest conversation about the historical underpinnings of the brutality. And we can't expect 1 year of a movement to change 200 years of police violence against the black body.
Okay.
That's unrealistic.
So you're a Boston kid. So let me move on to you. Right. I naively assumed that if, with cameras, even if they didn't change minds, they would change actions. Are you surprised that it's continued exactly as Derica seems to be suggesting?
No, I think she makes a great point that many of us have been trying to make for years, which is this stuff is historical. It's built into the culture of law enforcement, and it's built into the systems that typically protect officers when they do these type of things. You know,
and this officer probably would have been protected had there not been a video.
And quite frankly,
yeah.
I'm not even convinced in most of these cases that he'll be held accountable. There's another case that is eerily similar to this, of the Charleston case, where the young man had crashed his car and the video shows him walking down the street. The police officer pull up on him, get ready to tase him. He runs, and then he's shot many times. These are regular cases, and if this is the point to your question, it's so deeply entrenched in police culture. There's never been this heightened scrutiny of law enforcement probably in history, and they still do it.
Is it so ingrained in police culture, as Michael just said, and as Derica suggested a minute ago, Dan?
I think we need to change the way we train, and we need to engage the community in that process. What do they want us to do? The officers just want to know what's the acceptable use of force, when's the times I can use force, and if I abide by the rules, will it be backed up?
But wait a second, but even if they want rules so that they understand what they can do, I don't need any training to know that what happened a year ago in Chicago is not what I should supposed to do. The guy is walking away from them. He's shot 1 or 2 times. He's on the ground. They shoot him 14 more times, and none of the cops who were there, forget the shooter, even attempts to help the guy. Do you need training? Does a cop need training to understand that's not the way to treat a human being?
No, you need to make the training as realistic as you're going to find. We train officers to shoot at paper targets, and that's not the reality on the street. They get in situations where they're hyped up, their adrenaline takes over, and if we're not training them to that standard, you're going to have those results. I don't think that officer left that station with the intent to do that. However, his actions were unacceptable.
Is there any psychological profiling before? I mean, I know a cop has to take it. There is, so that you, because it seems to me from afar, I don't know, obviously I know nothing about this Van Dyke guy except I've read the last couple of days. A normal person, even in a tense situation, would never do something like that unless there was a real psychological issue. That I don't mean that as a defense, by the way. I mean it potentially is that I'm going to get to your head shaking in 1 second.
We both go.
Do you want to respond to that or no?
No, there's extensive psychological. There's background checks, there's written tests, there's psychologists who come in. There's extensive background checks on police officers. However, they go through a whole bunch of issues that change them. We hire them as human beings, and police officers are exposed to all kinds of stresses that the rest of the world doesn't deal with. And if we don't,
but they're trained to deal with those stresses. That's why they're a cop and I'm not.
That's where I think we fail. If we don't give them the training and the support to deal with those stresses, we get into situations where they become oversensitive. It becomes an us versus them criteria.
Derica, why are you shaking your head back and forth?
Yeah, so police culture creates this anti-blackness system that we have now.
What do you mean by police culture? Because Michael used that term too. What does that mean?
Sure. So even if we do psychological screenings, there's literature that I've read recently because I'm writing a paper. There's literature, a lot of literature that says police culture actually promotes anti-blackness, which means that we can do all the psychological evaluations, we can do implicit bias training, but when I'm a veteran and you're a rookie and I say, yeah, I know this has been your training, but you're going to follow me for a day and this is what we do in this department.
But you think the average cop has that ingrained in him or her? The average cop, not the outlier, not the Van Dykes. You think the average cop has...
So that's the problem. I don't think he's an outlier. So I would say that I think
So the answer is you do think the average cop. Do you buy that?
I believe that there's racism in all areas of life, including police officers.
Is there any greater amongst police officers?
Is there any what?
Is there any greater racism in police officers?
So the difference is it's a life or death situation. We entrust you with a gun and a badge and you can take a life and you can't bring it back. Teachers discriminate. Teachers have racism. They can teach a kid the bad way. A guidance counselor, a bus driver. But the problem with police officers, when they take to the street, and as she said, they perceive us as criminals, as violent, and they pull that trigger just a few seconds faster, that's a life being taken. We haven't addressed that.
How's Boston doing? Commissioner Evans is going to be here Monday. How's Boston doing on this front?
So we were just talking earlier. We have a great relationship where the commissioner texts me. Like he'll text me when these cases come up to let me know what he's thinking.
How's he doing? By the way, it didn't take him a year to release the video.
Video's here now. We released them immediately. So that's progress. Yeah. That's a model for the rest of the country. And then two, most importantly, is that we're debating with him in rooms on his social justice task force issues like this on a regular basis.
I only have a minute or so. Is there potential for backlash? Is it possible the average cop on the street hears what Derica says or Michael says or what's said on the street and says, I'm trying to do my job? They just don't appreciate what I'm doing. And essentially, I'm not talking about killing somebody. I'm talking about everyday police culture. Is there a backlash potentially?
There's absolutely. There's conversations going on in the community, and there's conversations going on in guard rooms around the country. And what we need to do is merge those conversations because it becomes us versus them. And we're all in this together. Police officers want to make neighborhoods safe. They do not want to wind up on the front page of the Herald or the Globe. They don't want to be the viral video on YouTube. They don't leave their house wanting to actually take someone's life. That's a far between. I wouldn't think of any police officer who ever thought of it. Now, I used to think that police officer would never shoot someone in the back until I saw the South Carolina video. So there are problems, there are challenges, but we have to merge these conversations. We're having these conversations separately. Let's get together and have the conversations about what you want us to do, how you want us to do it, and when we do things, how we're going to be supported, or we're going to be dealt with if we do the wrong thing, in this case.
We only have 15 seconds left. You have a son, do you not? Did I read that?
I do.
How old's your kid?
He's a year and a half.
He's a kid. When
He's a
he is a
kid.
teenager, what would you say to him? If things don't change, what do you tell him when he goes out in the world?
Sure, I'm not going to warn him. I'm going to tell him to be free. I'm going to tell him to be a free black boy. I'm going to tell him that even though his life he may be perceived as a threat, it shouldn't change his behavior. We can't do that. Respectability politics is dangerous in that regard.
Fair enough. Michael, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Derek,
Always.
it's really good to meet you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank
Dan,
you.
Jim,
as
thanks.
well. Thank you. Ahead, we'll introduce you to our latest Greater Bostonian who's proving song can dramatically change kids' lives. Plus, the Brass Sisters joined me with a new book and the secret ingredient that goes into all of their recipes. But first to the fight against ISIS online. Whatever you call them, ISIS, ISIL, Islamic State, Daesh. It's hard to deny that they become masters of online recruitment and propaganda. And that's exactly what the hacktivist group known as Anonymous is determined to end. Here's part of an online video they posted after the Paris attacks.
This violence should not weaken us. It has to give us the strength to come together and fight tyranny and obscurantism together. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Joining me now is a former member of Anonymous, Greg House. He spent a few months in prison for his role in a software piracy group, then went on to serve as a consultant for the Netflix show House of Cards, now runs a website called Rebel News, which focuses on politics and activism. Greg, it's great to see you. Day after Paris, Anonymous launches this they call it Operation Paris, hashtag #OpParis. Quote, anonymous from all over the world will hunt you down, meaning ISIS. How do they do that?
Online, the biggest goal for them is going after the recruitment methods. So where they've got social accounts, they're trying to reach, impressionable youth all over the world. They go after websites. They're even looking now in the dark web. And even just today, one of ISIS's dark web websites was replaced by funny pictures by anonymous members. The goal being to really shut down their methods of recruitment.
And from what I've read so far, Anonymous, or whatever Anonymous is suggesting they've shut down 20,000 Twitter accounts. Is that believable?
I don't know that 20,000 is believable. I believe the number is closer to the 5,500 range, but they also have been actually doing this since last August. It's over a year that OpISIS has been running. OpParis was just an extension of that.
And we should be clear, while you were involved early on, you're not informally involved with them now, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, there have been two primary criticisms that I've read of what Anonymous is trying to do. One, that there is far too broad a brush by using keywords and things like that. Journalists who are trying to cover this, Arab speakers, Muslim organizations that are totally innocent and positive are getting swept up in this thing. That's a legit criticism, is it not?
Absolutely a legit criticism. The one thing you have to take is, what does Twitter have to say about that? How many accounts they're actually removing that ended up not being right? They've said that that's a very low number. Twitter, they actually, in an article on Motherboard by Vice, they responded to that saying that it was a very low number of actual accounts that were hit that shouldn't have been.
That's a problem for the innocents. I mean, I think Anonymous not so long ago was trying to do the similar things with the KKK, and there were a number of people there who were innocent, and you get branded as either ISIS connected or KKK connected. That's a pretty hard thing to shed, is it not?
Well, the KKK one wasn't actually the Anons who were running that up. They had said, we're going to release data a week from now, and then someone else, completely unrelated, using the name, released it that night, and it wasn't the same data set. So who knows who that was?
Okay, and the second criticism I've heard is that while you Anonymous, the good news is you'll disrupt the ability of ISIS to recruit, you also potentially disrupt the ability of intelligence forces to be able to track their activities, because it's through these Twitter accounts often that people who do track them, governments for example, are able to do it, and you remove that ability. How do you plead to that?
Some of the people actually taking part in this, including some of the GhostSec people, who is kind of one of the groups really managing this, are actually dealing with federal agents to deliver the information before it even is given to Twitter or anywhere else. And from what they've said in the interviews they've actually done, including Mr. Smith, the guy at the Kronos Group who is dealing with the federal agents, it's not affecting them in any way adversely, and they actually are appreciative of what's going on.
Is there, but when you say this, I wasn't aware that there is coordination with some government entities. Is that true?
There are a few people in the community who are doing that. Others in the community, of course, are kind of against the idea, but it's happening.
Now, those who would hear about this would say on one hand, I think, well, not those, I would say on one hand, the good news is the goal is noble. The bad news is there's this loose association of vigilantes. I mean, that is a fair description of what you used to do and what they are, who may do damage maybe they don't intend it, but do damage to things I care about. Why is that not a worry that should be as great as your potential to do good? Vigilantes, that's a term most of us use in a pejorative way. You use it in a positive way, correct?
You know, I think in some ways it can be positive. It really depends on what the governments around the world are actually doing and what their capabilities are. They weren't doing this one thing that we think needs to get done. So people stepped up to do it themselves.
And so what's the end game? Be as optimistic but realistic, if that is an oxymoronic. What can Anonymous do? What can they potentially achieve in their war against ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call it?
Being as realistic as I can, the one thing that I think they can achieve is making it really hard for them to recruit online, making it hard for them to get to the impressionable youth in other countries that might do things like what happened in Paris. Sure, those people didn't come from there, but it's the same idea. And making it where they have to keep rebuilding all of these accounts anew every single time, slowing them way down.
I hope you're right, Greg Hausch. It's good to see you. Good luck with your news service. Appreciate
it. Thank you.
When it comes to ways to pay for college, singing rarely comes to mind. But one Dorchester woman has helped a generation of local kids sing their way to success. Stephanie Lydon introduces us to our latest Greater Bostonian.
Before they performed at Symphony Hall, the Soweto Gospel Choir showed up on another local stage, the Dorchester Boys and Girls Club. They sang alongside teen musicians who have been rehearsing this South African piece for months. For the kids, this kind of cross-cultural experience is thrilling, but not all that unusual. Boston City Singers traveled to places like South Africa, Costa Rica, and New Zealand, the country where founder Jane Money grew up.
3 and
She came to the U.S. as part of a master's program in music education, spent years working as an engineer, and was raising her own family in Dorchester when she decided to recreate the kind of community singing experience that had been a big part of her own childhood.
we got about 20 kids together to sing around a Christmas tree right up the street.
And that might have been an annual tradition.
That could have been, and then that might have been it. And then we come again the following December. But then there was an interest from families to keep that going.
20 years later, Boston City Singers is a musical force. This is one of 14 choirs. 500 kids enroll each year. They start as young as 4. Older singers mentor younger ones. Everyone works hard. Schools, homes, even families may change, but for the Boston City Singers, this group and its founder remain a constant.
I love her so much. She's like another mother to me.
Natalie Augustin, a high school senior from Milton, was 10 when she first met Jane Money and joined Boston City Singers.
Before, I would not be able to speak to you right now. I really would not be able to.
You'd have been too shy?
Yes. She pushed me to say hi to people and to talk to people and be more open.
Music is the core, but there's another theme running through this program, getting into college. City Singers get help with everything from writing essays to winning scholarships.
Yasser El Hamoumi just graduated from Union College on a full scholarship. He's back at City Singers to help advise college-bound seniors. Jane inspires that kind of loyalty.
She gave me the opportunity to, get the education that I got.
The majority of Boston City Singers come from modest means, but nearly all will go to college. Some will pursue music, but Jane says what she hopes is they'll each find a passion and follow it. Like she did.
It's turned into a mission for me that I really believe that something as simple as singing can really change who we are.
Stephanie Lydon, WGBH News.
Boston City Singers will be performing throughout Boston and as far away as Peterborough, New Hampshire this holiday season. You can find a full schedule of their concerts on our website. And if you know someone making a difference, nominate them as our next Greater Bostonian. You can email us at greaterboston@wgbh.org. And now to a very special Thanksgiving Eve treat. My next two guests have a combined total of 128 years baking experience, from cookies and cakes to pies and breads. They have a new book out. It's terrific. It's called Baking with the Brass Sisters, and it digs deep into their recipe histories. Marilyn and Sheila Brass, haven't seen you in years. It's great to see both of you.
Great to see you.
So 128 years is about time to get it right. Would you not agree?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, but still trying.
Okay, now let's start with the important. What is this?
That is a pumpkin tea cake with a brown sugar and toasted walnut topping.
That's unbelievable. What is this thing?
Okay, that's a mocha.
My mother always said, "Don't speak with your mouth full," but I have to.
You're allowed.
Go ahead.
You're
What's
allowed.
this?
That's a mocha truffle tart, and it has a chocolate crust, and it's garnished with chocolate-covered coffee beans.
I knew that. And what's that thing over there?
That is a chocolate chess pie.
Oh, beautiful. Now, do you want a quiz?
Yes.
Sure, why not? What is this? Come on, time's running.
Who baked it?
I did.
Wow.
What cookbook did I bake it from?
I think it looks like our chocolate banana muffins.
It does, from page 30, chocolate walnut banana muffins. And by
Was
the
I
way,
right?
you can either taste them now or take it with you. Take a taste while you're talking.
I'm going to take a little taste.
Okay, tell me what you think.
Because you know when you're on television, you just take a little.
What do you think? Is that true? Or you said before you tasted it?
I didn't.
That was for the look.
Oh, it is. And how's it taste? And do you like it or you don't really care for it?
I think it's delicious.
So you know what I love about this book? And actually, you were shocked that I actually read it, but I did. It seems to me the history of the food is as important as the food itself.
It is.
Is that not fair, Marilyn? That is the deal, right?
That's very fair.
Why does it matter so much to you?
I'm going to have another piece.
Oh, have another bite. Good.
Okay, Sheila's going to eat for me.
Why does it matter so
All
much
right.
to you?
It matters because a lot of these women would have been forgotten. And every family has a story. Every family has a recipe. And we have a collection of over 200 manuscript, handwritten cookbooks.
I love that.
And some of them are just a list of ingredients, no time, no temperature, no instructions. So we sort of are the stewards of these recipes.
You're the ones that keep them alive.
That's right.
But Sheila, so when we go to Thanksgiving, if someone's watching at home and has a grandmother or who's going to be at that dinner, they should ask them questions, right? And they should write down things so that they preserve this too, right?
It doesn't matter if you write it on a napkin or,
bite of this,
any kind of paper or make an appointment.
Remember with Aunt Ida?
With Aunt
What happened with Aunt Ida?
We sat her down. I had a birthday card that someone sent me. I just turned it over and I got her recipe for poppy seed cookies.
That is fabulous. Yes. And it lives on as a result. Is it fair to say that baking is much harder than cooking? And if you agree, and it is, I mean, at least in my, and if you agree with that, why is it? Have another bite of that. Why she doesn't like it, but I'm glad you do.
I love it, but I want to be able to talk to you.
Okay, so
I can talk with my mouth full.
Please don't. Why is baking harder than cooking? I'm right, aren't I?
Yes, you are.
Why is it harder?
But I'm going to qualify what you've said.
Please.
Whether you like it or not.
No, I want you to. Go ahead.
Well, it has something to do with the kitchen chemistry. You have to follow the instructions, and you have to be sure that the ingredients are measured correctly.
That's a very good point. That is the answer.
And you have to be sure that, for example, we tell people at the beginning of every recipe that you have to put the tray in the, the oven tray.
Oven, yes.
The oven tray at the right level.
Okay, so here's what I need you to do, because particularly since you obviously like what I made a little bit more.
Oh, I love it.
Can you give us a quick dessert recipe? You eat while we're talking here for a second. There's an inverse proportion between the effort people have to put into it, because it is Thanksgiving Eve, and the satisfaction the consumer has from it.
Okay.
What is it?
Number one.
This?
Yeah.
Looks very difficult to me.
That has a nice chocolate crust. You can go to your local grocery store.
Yeah.
They have delicious crust in the dairy case. All rolled out. You just, it's rolled up.
Yeah.
You roll it out. You throw it in.
They are, yeah.
The filling is heavy cream.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Good for you. I agree.
You just bring it to a simmer. Throw in the chocolate. Leave it for 5 minutes.
It's really not that hard.
No.
It's not that hard.
And it is beautiful. Presentation matters. Do we agree on that?
It does.
But it's so easy.
You eat with your eyes.
You do.
As well as your mouth.
You stopped talking for 60 seconds while you were eating that
I
little
know
muffin?
that.
That's why.
That's why.
Do you like each other, by the way?
We love each other.
You do, because I love you too. It is great to see you. Marilyn, Sheila, the cookbook is fabulous. I did read it.
Thank you.
Muffin's pretty good too, aren't they?
I love this.
Eat up, take them.
Yeah.
The book, again, is Baking with the Brass Sisters. It's really great, and you can catch them both in person this Friday. They're eating right now at the Harvard Bookstore in Cambridge, and you can find more information on that and some of their recipes right now, Thanksgiving Eve, on our website, greaterboston.org. Time now for tomorrow's Globe Tonight. Your first look at Thursday morning's Boston Globe with city editor Stephen Smith, and we're taping this today at about 4:30. Steve, great to see you. What's on page one?
So, Jim, you may have missed this in the book of Revelations, but it turns out it is positively sinful to throw away your turkey carcass. So saith the book of Dukakis, as in Michael, as in the erstwhile governor and presidential candidate for decades. He has been keeping the not so dearly departed remains of the Thanksgiving feast and storing them away in the family refrigerator along with the turkey carcasses of any relatives who care to contribute. Then over the course of the year, he excavates them from the refrigerator and makes turkey soup. It is testament to a life personal and political with a deep aversion to waste.
When he became an octogenarian, I said, so how you feeling? He says, well, as you know, Jim, 80 is the new 20. In any case, what else is on page one, Steve?
So, Jim, for Thanksgiving, we have the story of two sisters, one teacher, and a family years in the making. Ty Hamilton had long been a favorite of her teacher, Ms. Brewster, in Mattapan. But then one day the teacher got a promotion and the teacher and student went their way until one snowbound Sunday when the teacher opened her Sunday Globe and saw a picture of Ty and her sister Maya, two sisters longing for a home after a lifetime spent in foster homes. The teacher, Ms. Brewster, and her husband were in their 50s, but they decided they had plenty of energy and more than enough love for a new family. And I have to tell you, as an adopted child myself, this is a deeply resonant story. It brought me to tears.
Well, as a father of two adopted kids, I feel the same way. Steve, happy Thanksgiving.
And to you, Jim.
Talk to you soon. So what am I thankful for this Thanksgiving Eve? That I am not a Syrian refugee hoping to come to America. The new Canadian Prime Minister tweeted this yesterday afternoon. Our goal is to identify 25,000 and welcome 10,000 refugees by December 31st, the remaining 15,000 by the end of February, #welcome refugees. And the leader of the country where the 130 people were executed, Francois Hollande, said this. Some people say the tragic events of the last few days have sown doubts in their minds, but he added that it is a humanitarian duty to help Syrian refugees. Hollande said France will welcome 30,000 over the next 2 years. That's 6,000 more than he committed to before the mass killings. And then there was one who would lead this country.
If I win, they're going back. They're going back.
What I want is I don't want them to come here.
There are 289 Republicans and Democrats of the House of Representatives who, despite their attempted spin, are just saying no as well, as are a majority of Americans. This despite the rigorous 2-year admission process laid out in detail in this weekend's New York Times. While Congress addressed a problem that didn't exist, they ignored the path that a terrorist is far more likely to take, one which 20 million people from 38 countries, including France and Belgium, take each year. Those millions don't need a visa to come here. They buy a ticket, bring their passport, undergo the usual screening from customs when they land in the U.S. I'd say this demonstrates Capitol Hill's action was not to protect us, but to protect themselves. Bottom line, the rest of the world is doing what the U.S. should be doing. Vetting, but then welcoming children, men, and women fleeing terror. People like these who deserve to have something to be thankful for. The possibility of coming to our country, a land of immigrants, should be one of those things. You agree? Email us, tweet us, share your thoughts. That's it for tonight. Come back tomorrow for a look back at some of our favorites, including Energy Secretary Ernest Miller Nees, Supreme Court Justice Breyer, and a vacation to the middle of nowhere, courtesy of GBH's Christina Quinn. Then we'll be back with a new show Monday. One more thing before we go. Our special thanks this Thanksgiving Eve to Greater Boston's executive producer, TJ Killalay, whose last day with us is today. His contributions have been immense. We're going to miss him on behalf of the entire show. Thanks, TJ, and happy Thanksgiving to you all.